You guys want to do
It's gonna be Inward
a
singing.
quick 3-part harmony? Okay, do it again.
What was that last note? It sounded sort of distressing.
You guys, that's not how 3-part harmonies work.
Yeah, you do one at a time, right?
The
That's how
one,
harmonies
the
work.
major, minor, third, the fifth, the octave.
All right,
Okay.
I'll start
I
with
could-
the lowest.
I could barely.
Oh, don't do that again ever in my life.
Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert Ian Barnard, American retro design expert Dustin Lee, and the ever-talented South African illustrator Lisa Glantz. In this week's episode, we discuss how to make your clients happier. A happy client often equals a happy designer, yet so many designers aren't proactive enough in thinking about how to delight their clients. We share a ton of tips in this episode for how to foster your client relationships, so let's get into the show. So this week we are brainstorming how to make your design clients happier. Ian, raring to go. He's pulling a yawn there already. It's not a good sign.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's all right. He's coming out of illness, dear listeners. So we're lucky to have him with us today. He's pulled himself out of the dreaded man flu to be here with you. But yeah, we've all had design clients. We continue to have customers, I guess, and they are clients in a certain form. And of course, many of the listeners are freelancers. They have clients. They might have clients through their full-time job. And I think it's always important to think, how can you serve them better? How can you make them happier? Because a happy client has endless positive benefits, right? They're going to be easier to deal with. They're probably going to pay you in a more timely fashion. It's generally pleasant to be getting on and building rapport and building a relationship with someone. You're almost guaranteed to get more repeat business from them. They are more likely to refer you. Like, there's so many positive points when you make your clients happier. But how do you do that? Dustin, I'm going to pass the gauntlet to you because I think you're the most awake out of the four of us today.
Well, I think you're probably the expert at this, but one thing I've noticed that has made my customers really happy, and this goes for when freelancing or with customers, is quick responses are like a magic secret ingredient. When you respond fast, especially, and I know this isn't always possible, but when we respond to people in under an hour, we almost always get a gawking comment about, I can't believe how quickly you responded.
Yeah.
And that person is much more likely to become a loyal customer. It's like magic, except for it's not magic. If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense.
It does, and we've experienced exactly the same thing. But unless you've got a dedicated customer service person, how do you manage that with other stuff we talk about on the show, which involves finding balance, having a life, perhaps not being stressed out living in your inbox?
Let's keep this positive, okay?
And simple.
Well, I mean, you can set expectations and then just hit those on the nose, you know. So you could say, I check my emails at these times and these are the hours, so people know, and then promptly respond when you say you will on those times. That to me is just as good. Most frustrating thing for me, and I am totally guilty of this, although with people helping me, I'm getting better. When you know what to expect, it's so much easier, right? Like if I message a company and they're like, we'll be here at this time, and then they answer you at that time, so much better than just like it floating. What, did they get it?
Yeah, it's building up trust,
Yeah.
which, as we all know, is one of the pillars of happy customers.
And clients, 100%.
And clients.
So Yeah, I think responsiveness would be the kind of summary word for it. Responsiveness, and also the kind of accountability, I guess. And this works across the board. It works with partnerships. I know that's more on the business side of things, but if you're a designer, you might be networking. I hate that word, but you will be building relationships with other designers, with people at conferences, etc., etc. And it is such a rare thing in this world. And I remember we worked with Chris Spooner on a product, and we had an existing relationship with him. But given that he's a one-man band, and we actually had him on the show, so anyone who's a fan of Chris, if you haven't heard that episode, I forget what it is, episode something, but if you search on the website, you will find it. But yeah, Chris is super talented, but he's also essentially a one-man band. So he is putting out prolific amounts of content. He's running a pretty big business, successful blog, what seems like about 12 massive YouTube channels at this point. He's a really busy guy. But when we collaborated on a project, he was getting back to us like super rapidly. I never had to really push him. It didn't feel like an uphill struggle. And that is such a rare thing. Mm-hmm. It was so refreshing. And as he was doing it, I remember having the thought, I was like, this genuinely could be like the key to his success. Like, obviously he's got the talent and he's been prolifically consistent and so on. But number 3, I would put like how responsive he was, because I remember when I was freelancing and running a blog, I actually wasn't that responsive. That's only something I kind of discovered through really pushing myself with Design Cuts. But I would be making excuses why stuff was late, getting back to people late, thinking, I'll get to that tomorrow. And when you fall into those kinds of patterns, it sets a really bad and damaging precedent. And it hurts your reputation. It hurts your relationships with your clients and your customers and your readers, whatever it might be. And it wasn't until I tried the opposite approach. It was like black and white contrast with the results I got, being super responsive versus not really all that responsive. It was such a stark difference. And I just thought, oh man, like if only I'd known, I would have done that years ago.
And I think if you can't be the 1 hour guy, like respond straight away, if you can only respond the next day, then at least when you do respond, be thoughtful and respond, holistically. In other words, like often people make the mistake of just answering the last question, or they respond by saying yes. The person needs like a bit more than that. So at least make them feel that you have read their email properly. You're taking the time to actually answer every question, or give them feedback or whatever it is that they're asking. So a lot of people make a mistake by just being way too simple and what do you call it, sort of
fluffy.
Undetailed. Yeah, fluffy, and you just like you're not getting to the point. You're not getting to the crux of the matter. So it's important to at least be clear and look like you've spent time in their email.
Can I talk about email? I'm very much the person who does the sorry for the delay all the time. I think what happens is that I look at the email and I think that requires a thinking response.
Yeah.
And so then I can't answer it right then, because it requires me to either I'm looking on my phone and I need to be on my computer to respond to it because it needs me to look at some files or something. And then what happens is I then forget about it, and then I realise 3 days later that I should have replied to that email. Right. And so, I don't know how to. I sometimes don't read the email just in case it says something I need to do, and then 3 days later I open the email. So I'm very much one of those people that needs to learn to be more responsive. Or I'm normally quite good with customer queries because they're usually something I can think of off the top of my head. But if it's more a client request or client interest, it's something I have to think about more. And that thinking time can sometimes get distracted.
Yeah. Although I do feel like there is a bit of a shelf life, particularly on stuff like social media. So Twitter, I know how much more effective it is when you're practically live responding with someone and getting into almost a live conversation.
It's true.
Versus if 24 hours have passed, it's kind of dead on Twitter, because in that place, it is very much the water cooler of the internet. And if a day or two has passed, you know, you can forget it. That conversation's been buried. And I have seen the same thing. Even though I used to be less responsive, I would occasionally have a moment of acting like a professional human being, and I would get back to people pretty much instantly. You know, I happened to be in my inbox when their email came in, and I wrote straight back in that kind of live setting. And it worked wonders with clients as well.
Yeah.
Because if I left it 3 days, they could have given up hope. They could have gone and found another designer to work with. And the fact, no sooner had they sent the email than they get one back 2 minutes later, let alone an hour later, being like, yeah, I'd love to work with you. It's like, oh, wow, okay, like, let's do this. And you've got them also when they're in that mindset. They haven't gone and had like a crappy day or got distracted or something else has happened in their next 48 hours or whatever. They're in the mindset of, I quite want to work with this designer.
Yeah, you're so right. I remember when I started selling stuff, when people would email me, I was so afraid that it was going to stop working or that my business was going to fail that I responded. I mean, I would be laying in bed sometimes, and if I got a message, I would get out of bed and go respond. And it did do wonders. People could not believe it. I got so many early customers that way.
It's great.
Yeah,
and it helps you stand out. I remember you saying to me, Dustin, you were like, when do you sleep?
Oh, yeah.
Because I'd be doing this with you, right? I'd be like live emailing you back, and you were like, dude, what gives?
Yeah.
But I think, I mean, it's because let's be realistic, we can't all do that, and we can't do it all the time. You know, so you need to, I think what's a good tactic, and it's something that I kind of do, because I can't possibly respond to everybody, you know, live, as you were saying, but I can to say 3 people who, as you said, happen to be in my inbox at the same time as me. So there's nothing wrong with, I think, picking and choosing if you can, in a way. But I think it's unrealistic to put so much pressure on yourself that you got to do that with every client. If you can do that with every client, that's fantastic. But if you can't, then at least choose the ones that are super important, that are your biggest clients, and then like really go all out, you know?
Mm-hmm. And I think that's quite a good mindset, because I'm all or nothing. So I used to be like, well, if I can't do it for everyone, I won't bother. But you're so right.
Yeah,
it is better to do it for 3 people
rather than do it
0.
for nobody, you know?
Yeah.
And this kind of dovetails into another thing that I think helps a lot with making customers happy, which is anticipating concerns so people don't have to contact you about something in the first place. I remember reading about Amazon, and Amazon had said their goal was to make it so customer service was unnecessary because everything has been accounted for and taken care of that would become an issue. And while I don't 100% agree with that, they've done a pretty darn good job of doing that. I've never had a situation where I was frustrated because I couldn't contact them. And I think that by realizing what your client needs and making it available and anticipating it is like a really high level of respect for a customer.
Yeah, and you don't need to be Amazon to do that. I'm sure they have hundreds of people who, much in the same way people try and break websites by testing them, cross-browser testing and all kinds of stuff like that, it sounds like they're doing a similar approach with customer service. And they might have hundreds of people trying to think of everything they can do to be a difficult customer to kind of see how that scenario plays out. And just because you're not Amazon, say you are a solo freelancer, you can still do that on a small scale. Like you can start taking a note, you know, are you hearing similar kind of stuff from clients? What are some similar issues to the stuff you are hearing that perhaps you're not hearing? You could actually go through your own, not onboarding, but you know what I mean? You could pretend to be a client for yourself, or you could actually grab a friend and do it for each other, where you're like, I'll pretend to be your client and you pretend to be mine. And then you literally have to like have a bit of fun with it, you know, make believe, kind of play out the scenario and be like, hello, I would like a logo, please. Like, what can I do? And see how they would genuinely respond.
That was quite Mr. Beanie-fied.
Yeah. I got a real life example, like just happened today, actually, literally right before we got on it. So we just released a Procreate pack yesterday. And on some of our packs, what we do is we automate so an email gets sent the next day with a tip to make it easier. So we had made an article on here's how to install Procreate brushes, because originally you had to manually install every brush, and now you can just through an airdrop when you're inside of Procreate, it'll just load them all up. And I don't know how many people know that. So we made a post on that, and then they get an email today letting them know, hey, here's something cool you can do that will save you time. People might not even know that or ask about it, but I think by being proactive and sending them information, they're like, oh, wow, when I do business with this person, there's stuff that was never promised to me that helps.
The sort of after sales.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
it goes hand in hand with what we've often discussed, like that whole client sort of brief. You know, even after meeting them, you can send them a whole sort of, okay, so this was the meeting, this is the the synopsis of the meeting, and this is the process you can expect. Because I think just communication, going back to that whole thing of like, you know, spelling it out and making it so simple for them to understand, okay, what can you expect from me? What do I expect from you? So that we can both be happy along this process. And I mean, the main thing that everybody moans about all the time is just tell me so I know what's going on. Like if you're stuck at the airport and no one's telling you that your plane's like, when is your plane going to take off and why is it not taking off? I mean, people just want to know like what's happening. That makes them happy. It's the same thing with clients. Like, just don't leave them in the dark. Like literally hold their hand through the process. And if it means like setting up a PDF document that you send out to them as a thanks for meeting with me yesterday, this is how it works, this is what you can expect, you know, blah 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 blah. I think that helps.
I love that, but I also think it will help your conversions of browsers to clients when you do that, not only with people that have contacted you and who you've met, but like random visitors to your portfolio site.
What do you mean?
So
true.
So what I mean is that I think a lot of the time people don't contact you because they're slightly scared about how the process is going to work. And so I think most people don't communicate that at all. Then the minority are winning because they communicate it when the client gets in touch. So they say, hey, I want to work with you. And then it's like, oh, great, have a look at this PDF that explains it. But why not actually show that before they even contact you, where they're considering it, but many of them won't. So they can go on your website and they're like, okay, this person does some work. Oh, great. Here's a big call out on the website saying, click here to see how the whole process will work. And then you break that down for them and then have the call to action to sound good. Now get in touch. And I've never really seen that done. Like people might do a vague thing, be like, we have a holistic approach and it's going to be fantastic for you. But they don't.
And it's so weird because it's like a pain point for all new small companies. You know, when they want to employ a designer, they're like, okay, so how do we go about doing this? Like, what do we do? What do we bring to the table? You know, it's weird that
I would love, like, if I was on a website and it's like, okay, here's how it's going to work. You contact me and provide these details. You will hear back in 24 hours. I'm going to then probably follow up with a phone conversation, which looks like this. And if we agree to work together, it's going to take roughly this long. There's going to be this many stages involved. It will cost roughly this much. And it's going to be fun as well. And here's some fun moments throughout that process of how we can collaborate and share ideas. And the end result looks like this. And that's going to be fantastic.
And it's only $5,000.
Exactly.
It's only $5.
No, I think that would be really good though. And I don't understand why more people don't do it. And I think it works for every business, to be honest. If I was booking into, I don't know, get a spa treatment or something like that, right? Like I think being vague is just the worst thing in the world. When you know exactly what you're signing up for, like that's awesome. We were talking before this call about newsletters. Same thing there. You don't want to sign up for like free updates and then get bombarded with stuff you didn't want. But if you're saying, I literally want to sign up because you're going to email me Wednesdays and Fridays with this and this, please give me this thing, people are going to be so much more engaged. So yeah, I think just transparency. And I know we kind of started this episode, actually, we were going to talk more generally about client happiness, but I think this has very rapidly become an episode entirely about client communication and how that makes them happy. And I'm like completely happy to talk through that more with you guys, because I think that is a big topic in itself. I think ultimately
that is what makes people happy. Like
Yeah.
they know what, they know what's going on. They know what they're getting for their money. Yeah.
So you can start communicating. Is that sort of communicating before communicating?
Yes.
Yeah.
Trademark that.
One of my favorite things it's so funny because Tom, you're totally right. Companies don't do this nearly enough, and it's such a low cost opportunity. I use a social platform called Sprout Social that lets you basically respond to comments on all different platforms from one place, just saving you from the logins and stuff.
Yeah.
Signed up, and every week they send me some sort of great article on, for instance, how to get more interactions on Instagram, or like not using LinkedIn enough. Here's our big guide on how to do that. So as I'm using their product, they're making me more excited about it by something they wrote once, and then they're giving away over and over again. But it's constantly like reigniting the possibilities for me. And it makes me want to stay with them because I get so excited about the things that I'd be able to do. And I think that applies to a design business too. You start working with a client, and as they're getting deliverables or as things are happening, you can be sending the very similar things to the same people, getting them excited, lighting something in them about the possibilities of what you're doing.
I've got an example of that. So when I designed, this was a real bugbear, and I don't know if people listening can relate, but I was doing web design stuff, and I would hand over this final, beautiful website to the client, and they would take it and they would love it. And then I would go and visit it a year later or 2 years later, and they'd started trying to customize it. And they, rather than like give me a shout, they're like, oh, we'll do this ourselves. So all the imagery was really balanced, and suddenly they start throwing in their own photos, and then they start breaking text boxes by just like ramming way more content than it was designed to go in there. And you come back and it looks horrendous. It's like they've destroyed your beautiful work. And so that could be quite an interesting piece of content that I could have sent out to my clients, basically saying, this is quite a common thing that happens. And this isn't me being a fussy designer where this just bothers me because it's my perfect end product, but this genuinely looks worse. It's a mistake.
Yeah.
You are making your website look worse. You're basically undoing what you paid for with your hard-earned cash. So here is how to avoid doing this. Either option A, come back to the designer, me in this case, and I'll do it for you properly. Or option B, here's 10 steps to avoid doing this. If you really want to tinker with it yourself, here's how to stop it looking like a piece of crap when you've finished.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a lot of articles, if you can call them that you can come up with. Like, gosh, I mean, logo design, brochure design, getting your stuff printed and reprinted, and what to do next, and how to get hold of the artwork. And even I had clients when I was doing, freelancing, they would come to me and say, I need a brochure designed. And the first thing I say, well, can you send me your logo? Well, we can't, we don't have it. So I said, well, you need to get it. And he said, well, the artist, the original designer won't give it to us. I said, well, you own it. Did you pay for it? Yeah, but they just won't give us the files. And I would say, but you've paid for it. It's your stuff.
Yeah.
So there's a client who actually didn't know their rights. And that would be like useful information to, give people. And it's all about like creating that thing of like, I'm going to help you through this process. I've got your back. I want to, get you to like grow as a customer and as a business yourself. And I'm going to help you because that's ultimately what they want. A lot of them are so confused and they don't know what to do next. And how do I get my delivery book reprinted? I don't even know the first step. All this kind of stuff. I mean, you can help them so easily. And as you said, Tom, write it once and just resend it.
Yeah, and you're basically increasing the value of your services by doing this. So when you say book a logo with me instead of my competitors, and you not only get the logo and this amazing communicative experience, but you also get our bundle of amazing PDF guides talking you through how to make design less scary or something like that.
Yeah.
So let's say you are, your target client is someone who is a bit more naive on this kind of thing. They probably are. I remember loads of my clients were scared to work with a designer because they thought they'd get ripped off. The same way people don't want to work with coders, or when it's stuff they don't understand, that is very scary, because you think, well, they could pull the wool over my eyes, and it would happen all the time. Actually, it's all coming back to me now. This is like walk down memory lane, but they would come to me and say, this other designer tried to charge me this much. Does that sound right to you? Because I have no idea. And I'd be like, no, they're ripping you off, because clearly they're not that good. And they've just, seen a vulnerability in you that you don't have a clue about this stuff.
Yeah, it's terrible.
In many cases, I would say, I'll talk to them if you want. Or if they were doing part of the design work and I was doing the other part, and I was doing it properly and affordably, I'd be like, seriously, like put me in touch with them, because I obviously know what they're doing and you don't, and that kind of thing. But as I said, I think you're increasing your value proposition to potential clients by doing that, because if they can say, oh, not only are they going to talk me through the whole thing, but I'm actually going to learn quite a lot in the process, and the whole thing's going to become less scary and intimidating.
Absolutely.
They are going to be willing to pay more for that, or certainly they'll be more likely to pay your standard rate.
And to add on to the idea you were talking about, Tom, of making the content available and it adds to the value of what you're doing, I remembered this thing. You've probably read Rework. Have you read Rework?
It rings a bell, but I don't think so.
It's by Jason Fried, and I can't pronounce his last name, and it doesn't matter. Anyways, it's called Rework, and what they say is whenever you're doing anything, you have scraps, like things that are left over. So if you're making a website, you're going to have email interactions with people. And at the end of it, they're kind of just scraps, right? Like you don't really need those email interactions. You probably save them just in case in a file. But what you could do with it is say, here's like a way I can use all these as a way to create like fantastic Q&As or anticipate what people are going to need. You know what I mean? It's like when you're working, think about, what am I making that I can't deliver to a client, but would be useful to a client?
Yep.
You know what I mean?
I do. I think another way of putting that is almost like a debrief. I think the temptation is to wrap up a project and go headlong into the next one. Whereas if you actually take even an hour to sit and be like, what went well, what didn't, what wasn't clear enough for the client, and you kind of analyze what's just happened over that project, that can be really powerful to take forward into the next one.
Yeah, and imagine if you, with your invoice, you send them an unexpected bonus of, like, as you said, like a PDF or something that'll help them in their next phase. It actually has nothing to do with you, just maybe advice on how to, I don't know, if you want to make changes, or if you want to get your stuff reprinted, or maybe you want to think about your brand in 5 years' time, or, additional information. And it's like, wow, okay, this person isn't just here to rip me off. I'm getting so much extra. Yeah.
I just thought as well, another guide could be talking about how quickly often design work will feel dated. I would maybe say that until the end rather than the start. Otherwise, you might dissuade me entirely. But as you're wrapping up the project, it's like, here you go. This all looks super up to date and it looks great. But just know, in the design world, things move so quickly. This is not something you then leave for 10 years or 20 years, because it will look incredibly outdated. And you could kind of make it educational and interesting and be like, look back at these websites from the 1990s or whatever. Of course, they look hideous now because things move that quickly, and really explain that to them, because that might be something they've never considered. They might think, well, we're set for life now. We've got our shiny new website or logo or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
I think a huge reoccurring or underlying theme or power of this idea is that at the end of the day, when I'm a client for someone and I have to pay a lot of money for something, my biggest fear is that I'm going to get the wool pulled over my eyes, or I'm not going to get what they promised me. And I'm going to be in this struggle to get my money back because I got screwed. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
You just did.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
I got suckered, and I'm not going to get my money back. So when you're helping people before they pay you, you've proven to them, look, I'm not going anywhere. I have good intentions. So many of the people I've ended up hiring to do things are people that have done things for free in the beginning. And it's not to advocate doing free work. It's just that the small free things they did do, just as a nice person, proved to me this is the kind of person to be with. Like when we first met, Tom, like Tom, way before we were partnering together, was, emailing me and talking about things. And before there was any guarantee we would ever work together, he was always helpful, nice, willing to talk about my business and how, here, maybe I have some ideas for you that could help you, before he ever knew that he would get anything out of it. And when someone's like that, you're like, yeah, someone else came along and talked to me, and they wouldn't answer my emails. They didn't want anything to do with me unless I could give them some money. And it just changed.
I think
the
that
dynamic.
has to come from a real place, because in my case, that's because I'm the biggest geek in the world about this stuff. And it just happens to have a positive knock-on effect. But I'm the guy, I'll be in my local coffee shop and be like, oh, you got a Facebook, do you? Okay. And I'll start pouring them, trying to advise them on their stuff. They're like, just take your coffee and get out.
Yeah. They're like, another Facebook expert.
I hate that, because I think anyone can kind of be one. So the fact that I would say we probably have a degree of credibility behind our advice, right? And we've got real experience, but you can't go and say that either.
No.
So you can try and help someone, and you can see the look of oh, here we go, another expert. But you don't want to open with, well, actually, here are my achievements, boast. And that's why you should listen to me, because that's terrible too.
Wouldn't it be cool though if you had a baseball cap and it just said Facebook expert, and you just came up to people in the coffee shop and was like, I see you're on Facebook.
or just went around, didn't say a word, and just put a business card on their table and then walked on.
And you're just like,
just gave it a thumbs up.
Yeah. So I think possibly to people listening, it could sound a bit overwhelming to be like, well, hold on, I'm already struggling to handle my client work, and now you're telling me I need to become this content factory and start putting together PDFs, etc., etc. What I would suggest is you could actually start just by doing it in an unscalable way on a one-on-one personal level with your clients. So say you got 3 clients and one of them is having a bit of an issue with something. So you put together a guide to help them. And it doesn't need to be super fancy or over designed, but you just put it together. It could even just be an email back to them. And it's going above and beyond. So you've wrapped up the project. You can actually see they're having an issue. Maybe you noticed something. They didn't even mention it. You noticed something on their website or whatever. And you reach out and you're like, oh, I can see, here's a problem. Let me help you with it. That could eventually one day become a guide, which you hand out when you see 5 future clients with that same problem. But for now, you're just doing right by that one client, right?
Absolutely.
So it's just shifting into that mindset of how do you help them.
That reminds me of Diane Gibbs. We all know Diane Gibbs. And when I went to meet her, we went out to lunch, and she brought one of her clients along. This is a client she's had for like almost a decade, I think. And they are clearly just good friends. Like, Diane has helped her so much with stuff and cares so much about the business that she's just gotten ongoing work. Another person might have done a single job for them. That would have been the end of it, and they would have parted ways. But because she cared so much and she kept having ideas, maybe this would work. Or she became someone where it was someone you come to, kind of like, we'll come to each other and be like, hey, what should I do? I'm not sure what to do here. You know what I mean? It becomes this relationship where you are actually looking for ways to hire them because they are so close to you and constantly, clearly would help you. Almost not for the money if they didn't have to live,
Yeah. Yeah, but as you said, I think, Tom, what you said earlier on, it has to be genuine though, because I think if people can smell out a fake. So I mean, Diane, I know she would be totally genuine. So if it's look, if you're not a people lover, is that whatever? I don't want to say pleaser because that gives the wrong impression. But if you don't enjoy helping people, I think maybe graphic design is not your thing, because I think that's the whole thing. I mean, I love helping people and solving their problems and kind of coming up with better ways of getting their company to succeed. And that's the whole thing about being a graphic designer. You have a little role in that, and I think it's so awesome. And if you can translate that enthusiasm and that desire to actually want to do better for your client into the communication and the design and the delivery and everything else, I think you have a client for life.
And you don't
know?
have to be a people lover by like nature. I don't think. I think if you're not, you can think of it as an exercise to try to just do something small and meaningful for someone once a day in your business.
Yeah,
Take a little extra time on that email.
And
exactly.
It's pretty addictive because people respond so positively. You're like, oh, that felt nice. I want to do more of that.
Yeah, it's true.
It's so funny. So many big things will happen in a day sometimes, and then the person that emails me and is like, I love you guys because you responded so quickly. Like sometimes a review will pop up and someone will be like, the product is great, but they respond so quickly and help too. Or my favorites are when they're like, the product, like I couldn't figure it out. It was so frustrating. And then they responded so quick and it's all good. And I love these guys. That's even better almost. Like I hate to say it's better when they have a problem, but when they're happy that you fixed it, which we don't always succeed at that, but when you do, it makes your day.
Absolutely.
For sure. I would also say pay attention to your nature. So Dave Clayton, for example, regular listener and friend of the show, he set us up with Aaron Draplin as a guest.
Mm-hmm.
And he is through and through, he's like the world's best connector of people. He puts people together. And that's not his full-time job. He works for Astute Graphics, and his job is very much there and connector. It's like a side gig almost for him. And it's just naturally his personality. It's naturally what works. So what is your and? It's designer and what? Maybe it's teacher. So maybe it's putting together these guides and stuff like that. But maybe you hate that kind of thing. Maybe you're more of a connector. So it's like, okay, I'm going to do the work for the client, and then I'm going to connect them to a fantastic printer that I know, or any manner of services they could need. Or maybe they need additional design work, but it's completely outside the remit of what I do, maybe animation or something. So I'm going to put them in touch with that person. So work out what you are: teacher, connector, schmoozer, like, what is it? Listener. Yeah, listener.
And if you're not a natural at it, I think it can be really helpful to find people. You probably know someone that does do that, and then think about what they do. I remember when I talked to Dave, for instance, he was so much like, gosh, he makes you feel like he's your number one fan. He makes you feel like I don't care about me. I just I think you're amazing. And it's so rare we get that when I was done talking to him, I was like, I want to be like Dave. Like people do, but we all have people that do that in our lives. And I'm not like Dave, but I think that when you know people like that, it helps you to be like, how can I try to
be like that?
Get a little seed of that, in myself. So if you're not sure, try to model someone or get inspired by someone.
I do like the idea of just kind of layering that on top as a bonus, though. And you might even need to ask the people closest to you what you are, because Dustin, you might hate this, but I would say you're kind of quite wise and philosophical, for example. And that can be channeled absolutely into a bonus kind of thing on top of your main design services. And maybe you're more like motivational or something like that, in which case it could be really rallying around their business. You've done the design work for them, and now it's like, oh great, like super positive, and kind of leaving them on that note. Or maybe you're really into marketing, and that's your bonus. So I'm going to help design your thing, and then I can't help but geek out over marketing. And so what if not every single minute of that is chargeable and being invoiced? Because you're doing it from a genuine, authentic place. You're enjoying doing it. They're enjoying doing it. And it just helps the communication so much.
And that's why they come back.
There's a great book by, I forget his name now. He's the founder of CD Baby, Derek Sivers. I think it's called Anything You Want or Everything You Want. And he said,
"How do you remember these names?"
I know, you're so well read. It's crazy.
I can't believe you remember all these names of these books.
That could be. You should totally do like Dustin's book club, and I'm only half joking there. And it could be like, buy a product, get a book recommendation.
I should.
That's your bonus.
But he says something in it that I thought was so cool. He founded CD Baby, and he started it because he was a musician and there was no way to deliver CDs if you were a small independent band back then. And he did it for himself, and then friends started asking him, how can I deliver CDs? Like, can you do it for me too? And so he started coding out the site more and more to help his friends. Then like his friends and bands were like, hey, I need this too. And next thing you know, he had this big, multi-million-dollar business that he eventually sold. But he said, remember, when you make a business, it's like when you're a kid, except for with the business, you can make your own world, whatever you want, whatever rules you want to make, whatever way you want things to run. That's your one little space in the world where it can all run how you want. So you can think about what do I wish someone would do for me, or what would be so special. And I just think that's such a neat way to think about it that just makes it not feel like work, but feel like something so exciting.
I love what you say about it being unique to you, though, because it will be. Like, no one else is going to be quite like you are with how you treat your clients.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
own that and don't be generic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
By the way, do you want a super random fact from my past?
Yes.
Yes.
Always.
So me and my friend actually launched a website called Discover Unsigned, and we were featuring unsigned artists and trying to give them exposure. And it didn't get as far as we wanted, but it did get to the point where they were submitting tracks and it was appearing on like a kind of variety album thing, which we were then putting out digitally. So it would be like discover like the latest 20 tracks from the hottest unsigned things, and it got like
cool.
it was getting a little bit of traction, and then we sold it for a pretty small amount. But we were teenagers, I think, at the time. And it was a real fun project. And one of them, I don't know if you know Boyce Avenue.
Yeah,
have you seen them?
the
like,
YouTube videos.
They got really
covers.
big on YouTube. They were on the first album because that was when
Cool.
they were trying to like break through as well. But anyway,
Crazy.
Yeah.
Man, just imagine if you had kept carrying that thing out, you might be a big
Record
record exec
mogul.
with that band on it.
with like a leather jacket and sunglasses on. Constantly.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, we could have been doing this in your mansion.
Damn it.
True.
Damn it, life choices.
Instead, you started a successful business and became a CEO of it. What were you thinking?
Yeah.
Well,
Right.
vectors are equally cool to music, right? That's what we can tell ourselves.
I feel like, and this isn't not a slight, but I think it's just the truth. People, because so many of my customers, and I think a lot of designers are musicians, and then because they're creative, they fall back onto design, either because they were making their own band's flyers or websites or whatever. Because I know so many people, including myself, that did that I feel like there's a disproportionate amount of musicians, band members, former band members
That are designers.
that are now designers.
Mm.
Yeah.
Maybe you should start it up again. Like a different one.
Dude, you haven't heard my band.
Yeah, we just heard you in the podcast intros.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you the lead singer?
No. I was the lead guitar. Or
Okay.
Nice.
guitar. Actually, that would have been really cool if it was guitar.
I would love that.
What if you
Jazzy though.
What if you found out this whole time when I've talked about guitar, you were mishearing me and I was saying guitar?
That would make me so much happier.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Pick that up. That'd be so cool.
I wouldn't either, actually.
I'm just imagining you with like a synchronized dance routine while you're playing.
Just biding my time till the 80s come back.
Anyway, random little tangent for the for the listeners, but just ending thinking about client communication. Have we got some final tips for people? First of all, communication is good. I think that's the main thing.
I like it.
Second of all,
Yes.
it will make your clients happy. It
Very
will give you more
happy.
potential clients. And I don't know. I think my tip would be shift into a communication mindset, because it doesn't naturally just happen. You need to like really have it in your mind. How am I going to over deliver communication? Like
Yeah.
write that out on a post-it and stick it on your desk or your forehead or somewhere. And if you look at that thing every day, I guarantee it will start to shift how you communicate with your clients in a positive way.
I agree. One of the important things I learned while freelancing was you make massive assumptions that people understand things, and they don't. They don't have a clue, and you're like, what's wrong with you? You know, like obviously you're not going to say it verbally, but you're thinking like, what the hell's wrong with you? Didn't you, don't you know that this and this works? Whatever. But they don't have a clue. So just assume that your clients really are coming from a level of, not having any clue about design or the process or even the technicalities. Just explain it and be patient and be kind.
And to be fair, why would they? When I get like a super technical handyman or electrician around my house, I will say to them, I literally have no idea what you're talking about. Please help me. I am I'm just, doggy paddling here. I'm trying to get by. And why wouldn't it be the same for design? Just because we know it?
Yeah.
I wouldn't. Absolutely. Yeah, they shouldn't know anything.
I would say communication, to me at least, conjures ideas of boring, I don't know, talks that are not fun that I want to leave. But if you can think of communication as an opportunity to do something really cool and fun and make it something that is an extension of your brand, then all of a sudden it's exciting, at least for me. Like, I don't like the idea of communication, and that when I hear communication, it makes me feel weird inside. I like the idea of making it sound fun. Like, communication makes something you feel like someone's going to tell me that we should talk. So make it fun for yourself. Make it fun for yourself, and it'll be fun for your customers, and they'll love you all the more.
Shame, Dustin.
Shame, Dustin.
Because
that should be a shirt. Literally, just like a picture of Lisa Glanz, and it says "Shame, Dustin."
Because I envision some you as a little boy, like somebody calling you, Dustin, we need to talk.
I'm just picturing like every girlfriend I've ever had in my life.
Well, Dustin, we need to communicate.
We need to talk. I don't think you should see me anymore, please.
Yeah, please stop serenading me outside the window.
Yeah.
Please put your guitar away. It's not Romeo and Juliet.
No more guitars in the middle of the night with the rain coming down outside my bedroom window. Trying to evoke that one movie. What's it called? What's that movie where he stands holding the
high fidelity?
No. The one where he stands. Same guy. But he stands outside the window holding the boombox in the rain.
Yeah.
Isn't it the part of the Brat Pack movies?
Yeah, I think so. Whoever's listening who can name it gets
please
$1,000 from Tom. Just joking. Tom does not agree to that.
Well, as it's your question, shall we say genuinely whoever answers first on social media gets one Retro Supply product?
Yes.
How about that?
That sounds good.
Stakes.
One.
Wow. but couldn't that be the I want everything?
That's why I said one. Bundles excluded.
Okay.
Yes.
But seriously, hit us up or hit Dustin up on social media. Instagram, hey Dustin Lee. If you know that movie, go claim your free product. Unless someone beat you to it.
Is that open just to one person? Or
yeah,
is that everyone who says...
The first one.
Cool. Ian, any closing communication?
I was just thinking, you know how like analogies?
Yes.
I was just thinking, what experience do I have it where communication is not very good and how that makes me feel? I was just thinking about going to the mechanics. A car's in the garage, you walk up and you go, you might say, oh, there's this one problem, but it needs a service. And then there's no communication. And then you get a bill of like £300-400.
Yeah.
And you're like, the car seemed that, apart from that one little thing, it seemed fine when it went in. And I think there's this thing, you just don't know. And you come out the other end just feeling a bit, well, there wasn't, that was a bad experience and there was nothing I could do about it.
Yeah.
And just feeling out of your depth. And
that's probably the best single example, because it's really scary going in, because you're like, how big is this bill going to be?
And then they say, oh, we changed the spark plugs, and you're like, oh, okay, it doesn't sound too bad. And then they say, well, labour's £200.
Yeah. We had to completely disassemble this part to get to that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
We thought you could do with changing all your lights and all your seat belts and all your chairs and all. We just built a new car, really. It's $10,000. So, I think it's, if there's different garages, I've taken these different garages and there's different ones do a different sort of style. One is like, well, if you go to one which is a nationwide chain, you you get a price on the online. You have like a normal service or an extended service, and it lists all the points that it's going to cover. You take it in at a certain time, and you know you're going to get it back unless there's anything wrong at a certain time. So you don't have to take the whole day off, or lose your car for a whole day, not knowing whether it's going to come back at the end of the day. And then they phone you up if they need to add anything onto the top of that, and then they explain it and they say how much it's going to cost. And I think that's a better experience. The only problem with that experience is that there's less passion, I find, with the people who are doing it. Yeah. Because, it's not their business. It's, they're an employee for a bigger multinational company. So there's less of it. But I think the way that they do it, where maybe, you don't have to put your prices online, but putting a list of what is included when you get to do a job with me.
Yep.
And then while you're doing it, making sure that if there's going to, say if there's going to be any added, because the thing is, the client doesn't want to get to the end and suddenly you go, well, it took longer than it was going to take. And you're like, well, why are you telling me at the end and not during the project?
Yeah.
If you say, okay, we've hit a bit of a snag, I'm going to have to add some few hours on top of it. I hope that's okay. There's going to be more likely, oh, that's fine, and less of a surprise at the end. Whereas if it's a surprise at the end, I always feel like, oh, why didn't you tell me it's going to cost that much? £400 on a car for a month, is like a lot. So why? Yeah. So it's all about that sort of the sort of trust and the communication and the not being surprised by the bill at the end.
Yeah.
Even though the bill's coming, you don't want to be surprised.
My mind's running away with me now, and I really like where you're coming from with that, because that is not a pleasant experience. So everyone listening, especially the people, if you're running your own thing, if you're a freelancer, and I know a lot of the listeners, they're struggling to kind of perhaps find their style or their brand or stand out or attract more attention from potential clients. One person listening, take this $100,000+ nugget that I'm about to throw you. Rebrand. If you're getting no traction, rebrand yourself as the trustworthy designer, and that becomes your brand and your whole image. And put out content around this, reshape your website around this, and reshape your client communication, your invoices, everything around this. So your whole website becomes like the trustworthy designer, the most trustworthy designer in the world, whatever it is. And you put out video content saying how to not get screwed working with a designer. Here's common things designers will do to pull the wool over your eyes, and here's why obviously I'm not going to do them, but here's what to look out for to protect yourself. When you send them invoices, go above and beyond and actually break down some of your expenses and exactly where you spent the time. So it's not just this many hours, pay up. It's like, actually, here's a breakdown of where those hours were allocated and why they matter and what's gone into your project. Like, put it through everything, and you can be putting out endless content, getting them to trust you. You can do a lot of the stuff we talked about in this episode, putting stuff transparently on your website about how the whole process is going to work, and just like lift the veil, don't hold anything back. And if that becomes your whole brand, I have never seen that anywhere. I've never seen like the designer you can trust, which is targeting specifically the people who are intimidated by designers and scared, like we all are with mechanics. I really hope one person does it. But to everyone listening, I guarantee that is a business idea. If you're sat there being like, oh, no one's paying attention to my site, or I'm not really getting, much traction at all, go do that.
Definitely a unique selling point.
Yeah.
And Tom only takes 10%, so it's all right.
It's a franchise.
And if you do it, hit us up and let us know if it works.
We can give you a shout
so
out.
I can send you an invoice.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Well, thanks a lot, guys, and thank you everyone for tuning in. Bye from us.
Bye.
See you later.
Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. We hope that it gave you plenty of fresh ideas for how to make your design clients happier. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com, or find us over on iTunes by searching for The Honest Designers Show. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean so much to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on the Honest Designers Show.